Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's selection comes at us from Madeo, or possibly Madao. Why the hundreds of videos with all the bad black death metal? Here, try this Vocaloid song for a change. On the one hand, shots fired. On the other hand, they're not wrong. Geez, we're going to be looking at MASA WORKS Design featuring Hatsune Miku and GUMI with the song The Fox's Wedding, or maybe The Fox Wedding. I'll have to look at that later and double check the proper title of this. Anyways, we have two Vocaloids here, 4 minutes of music. I don't know, man. Let's dive in. I don't have any expectations for this other than probably electronic music. Let's find out what's going on. Highly rhythmic on every level. And it sits right here on a rather tense chord. The relentlessness of the bass kick. And as the vocals, have they even taken a stop of any kind? The bouncing back and forth of the higher pitched, almost triangle sounding, definitely metallic. The Vocaloid element is interesting too because it presents its own kind of textural static element. It's very tense though. This whole song's going to make you feel really anxious from start to however far we are into it. Yeah, the bass kick sounds like a heartbeat, and it's faster than usual here. Okay, yeah, I mean, that was something. That was different. Geez, it made me super uncomfortable though. Like, dang, dude. That's just an anxiety fueled trip. It really is. And a lot of it just comes down to not necessarily like a ferocity to it, but definitely an unrelenting element. The song just doesn't let up. It's just always driving, always moving forward. And too, I think a lot of this is down to it's everything though. I guess just let's take it one step at a time. The percussion. We have the bass kick. We have it either on every beat, doom, 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 or every other beat. What this presents is a feeling of slow versus fast. And it allows us to have this contrast, which gives us this feeling of intensity during that faster bit. If it was just constant quarter note hits all the time, I don't know that it would have been as intense as it was. But like anything, contrast really helps deliver an idea. If you want intensity, pair it with something less intense. And I think that's 100% what we get out of the bass kick there. But we also have this metallic crash cymbal like sound. We don't hear it too often. It is there expressly for elevating the intensity of a section. We did hear it at the end of the track, and I think we heard it somewhere in the middle of the song, right before the break that happened about a minute prior to the song ending. So it gives us actually 3 levels there as far as the percussion's concerned. Every other beat, every beat, and then every beat with the crash cymbal on it. And that allows them to take something that feels normal, create something that feels intense out of it, back us down, bring it back up, and eventually bring that even higher. You didn't even know that. You thought we had already reached the peak. Nah, the song's got something a little more for you. And that's really all the percussion going on in here, at least the non-pitched percussion. There's also triangles and I don't know, the main melody is also on something percussion-y too. I mean, it's all synth work, but you know what I'm talking about. Synthesizers that sound like these instruments, analogs for these instruments, but some sort of like struck bell, like a glockenspiel, but not that. And that gives us these very sharp attacks. And that goes very well with the rest of the music too. The vocals are also giving us these very very sharp staccato sounds. And so you want an instrument that can give that off too, because a lot of the time the melody is playing alongside the vocal work. And there's a reason I don't call the vocal work the melody, and we'll explore that in a second. But this song is supposed to feel constantly pushing forward. So you need these quick attacks. It creates that anxious feeling. And you need an instrument that can handle that well. And wouldn't you know it, percussion is just fantastic at this, particularly because you can't hold a note out in percussion. If you want a sound to resonate, you have to keep hitting it so that the sounds overlap and reverberate. It's not like a guitar where you can allow the string to reverberate. It's not like an air instrument that you can continue to push the air through. You get one sound out of a percussion sound and that's it. They can resonate a little bit, particularly with like marimbas and glockenspiels. There's usually a, kind of like a piano with a sustain pedal. And it usually has like some pads or maybe some foam underneath the bars. And when you push it, it pulls the foam away so that the bars can, vibrate. And you can get a little bit of resonance out of that, but it's not going to be like holding out a note. another instrument, just like this indefinite ability to continue the sounds. And so percussion is just really great at fast, short, sharp notes. So great choice here. Although again, it's all digital. They could have done whatever they wanted with the sound. They could have made a trumpet, taken a trumpet sample, and then like chopped it up into really sharp attacks and releases so that it sounds just like hitting a marimba, but you have your trumpet sound. So, at the end of the day, it's all digital. It doesn't really matter from that perspective, but I like to come at things from a more acoustic direction because that's, that's my bread and butter there. That's where my brain goes. We do have this melodic flow on these instruments. The rhythm is constant. Pure 16th notes, I think, maybe 8th notes. I don't remember now, it's off the top of my head, but it's consistent. What changes is the pitch. We have rises, we have falls. Sometimes we stay on a note, drop to another note, rise and fall. It's all about this momentum pitch-wise, not rhythmically. That doesn't really change. And this is actually the same in the vocals as well. These are set up to not have much pitch inflection, but there's, not much rhythmic inflection, but there's also not a lot of pitch inflection either. I find that the vocals tend to sit on pitches way more often than the melodic percussion stuff does. And that's why I say that the vocals aren't the lead melody here. I think it's what most people's ears are going to gravitate towards. But for me, they actually kind of blended into the background as I realized that they were primarily rhythmic and textural information and not harmonic or melodic. And so I tended to hear the pitched percussion over the vocals most of the time, even though in the mix, they're kind of inverted. But they are two sides of the same coin. They are typically playing something generally similar, and if I had to give it a name, I'd probably call it counterpoint, even though I don't think the vocals are quite melodic enough for that. However, there is something really interesting about the vocals that none of the other instrumentation in here goes with. There's a lot of sliding into a pitch. How? That's the note that we're aiming for, but we start above it. How? That happens a lot on this track. I don't know why specifically, other than the fact that, again, it's synthesizers. They could have done it, but most pitch percussion doesn't really have a slide component to it. Each block that you're going to strike has a pitch. That's the thing about percussion. So maybe that's why. But it does create another schism between the pitched percussion and the vocals. Not just that they're doing things differently pitch-wise, where one moves a bit more than the other, but there's also different ways of getting into each pitch. And it really creates this, I don't know, like I said, two sides of the same coin thing where I don't think either one of these really work as well by themselves. It really is how the two get combined. It's really, I think the production on this really pushes the idea that you're supposed to hear these two instruments together as a single idea. And the rhythmic consistency between the two of them really leans towards that. But I don't know what to read into that other than typical harmony or texture layering. I don't see any thematic purpose for it, but maybe that's something I can pull in from the lyrical side of things, a sense of duality, but similarity, a sort of compare and contrast, a Venn diagram element between these two instrumentals or instruments. And so between the consistent, well, here's the other thing too. I want to bring this up. The vocals never quit. The percussion never quit. The pitched percussion, they don't quit. Everything is just constant. We pair this with the harmonic side of things. Much of the time, if you listen to the chordal stuff that sits on the bottom of the song, it's kind of static. You listen to the triangles off to the side, or what I assume are triangles, or what I think is matching the sound of a triangle. They're kind of static. I mean, most triangles are. You can't pitch change a triangle, but they're all hyper-focused on unsettling chords. Not that I think they're innately eerie or off-putting, but there's something about the chords themselves that have a bit of tension to them. It's almost like they should be in the middle of a chord progression rather than the chord that exists at any given time in this song. When we do change chord progressions on a large scale, a lot of the instruments are moving in a different direction. Maybe it's a key shift. We continue to retain this imbalance in the harmonic element. It gives the entire song a feeling of tension harmonically that matches the anxiety and stress that we're already getting rhythmically and from the unrelenting sounds. And I really think the unrelenting sound is something that brings all of this together. There are very few breaks in this track where the vocals quit, where the percussion quits. They just keep going all the time. I think this would reach a point of, I don't know, uncanny valley if the vocals were more realistic. This looks like the video came out in 2013. I don't know if the song is from prior to that, but we're looking at something that is using at least 12-year-old software for the Vocaloids. Maybe in the last decade, Vocaloids have become more human feeling. I mean, I've heard some crazy stuff out there, but I think it's still kind of perceptible. This is obviously, though, Vocaloid stuff. And I think that texture to the vocals gives it something that allows the song to work. I think if they were any more realistic, like I said, uncanny valley, because there is just no breathing in this song at all. So double-edged sword, well, no, maybe not double-edged sword, just used properly might be the way I put it to achieve this specific sound here. But yeah, I think that's where I'm walking away from this track right here, is that it's just unrelentingly anxious. I am just put in constant unease and tension while listening to this track, and it comes from practically every facet of the song, the rhythm, the melody, the harmony. Even texture and timbre lean into this too. So it's just such an inherent part of the song, and it wears that on its sleeve. It's not something that's hidden in the track. This is the surface level read of the song, and there might be more to that, but at least right here, it's one of those things that's just so incredibly obvious that it feels like it is the thing of the song. Let me dive into some lyrics here, see what's going on there. All right, here we have a song. I don't even know where to start with this. There are a lot of lyrics, which you could probably guess by just how, I'm going to use the word again, relentless the vocal work is. It tells a lot. Now, granted, there's also a lot of repetition of themes, ideas, and even, word for word stanzas in here. But it seems to be about some sort of fox, although there's also a supernatural element in here, so maybe some sort of fox spirit or something along those lines. It seems to be able to shapeshift, and it seduces humans, and after sex, it consumes them. It's a bizarre sentence, if I've ever had to say one in my life. But the thing is that it isn't necessarily a mean-spirited fox. It actually was raised by humans to do this. That's all it's been trained to do. At the beginning says, born in the capital, I was bound and brought up. Who knows how many years passed? By then I'd been played with. I'd degraded and devoured humans. And of course, this was all in Japanese originally. This is a translation that seems to be pretty close to some of the words I saw in the subtitles of the video, but I couldn't find an easy way to get a full transcription of that. So I'm on genius.com, which kind of hoping is a legit translation, not machine translated, but reading it, it seems pretty straightforward. There's not any weird grammatical elements to it. So we have this Fox person, Miss Fox, and also referred to as Lady Fox at times, and raised in captivity, trained to seduce and devour humans. And once they found their own freedom from whatever was happening here, they just continued to do this. At one point saying, "I want to eat you. I had seduced you with my body, and now I devour." We also get some perspective from people who have been seduced. There are some wild stanzas in here about their perspective of basically describing their intimacy and the fox's body. This goes on for a lot of the song. There seems to be 2, 3, maybe 4 different situations of somebody describing the fox or the fox describing the situation and then talking about consuming this human. At times going into details such as liver, stomach, I leave your intestine for last, so delicious. So it gets a little descriptive at times for some of the sexual and some of the feeding related parts. But there's another side to this song too, and I don't quite get it. Unless it's simply supposed to be a situation where the fox attempts to seduce someone and fails. There's a couple of stanzas in here that open up with, "Oh, Mrs. Fox, please don't take an umbrella." The first stanza of the song opens with this, following it with, "Quick, knit my feelings together, won't you? A daimyo's possession, corpses guarding the gate. Open it, please." Talks about going off to retrieve someone, retrieve the narrator possibly, but the narrator jumps between perspectives throughout this song, so I don't know who this is referring to. It says, "At the fox's wedding, when they lost me instead of you." We are talking about a fox, but I don't think the fox's wedding or a marriage of the fox isn't discussed really anywhere in here at all. But it is brought up. The fox's wedding is a phrase stated a few times. But we have this idea of the daimyo's possessions that comes up a couple of times as well. And I'm real rusty on feudal Japan, but daimyos were the rulers of an area, a region, I believe. If they weren't the rulers, they were definitely a little higher up on the list as far as people with power. So we're talking about things that are corpses guard the gate of the daimyo's possessions. Like, I don't know, man. And this is brought up so often. Like, it feels like it's a core aspect to understanding this song, and I don't get it. Another time we see the fox's wedding. "Hand me the umbrella, quick, knit my feelings together. We're at the gates of death. See all the corpses? Open up, please." So I'm not too sure how these two elements overlap. But like I said, there's like 25 stanzas in this track. There are a lot of lyrics, and I get half of them, and I'm not really sure how the other half relate to the first, and I don't even know how the other half really relates to itself. So I'm going to wrap this one up here because I don't really have any way of taking the lyrical side and bringing it to the musical side either. I feel like there's a lot of emotion that wants to be represented in the lyrics that I just don't think the Vocaloids can do. The rigidity of this song really gives it that anxious feeling, and I think the lyrics have a bit of anxiety to them, but generally speaking, I don't really think anxiety is the feeling in most of this song lyrically. And I would have liked a more emotionally expressive track to go along with this story, to kind of give it the ebb and the flow that I think it really needs. I don't want to necessarily bring this back to rock just for rock's sake, but I definitely think a progressive stance to this, a song that is a bit longer, takes its time to get through some of these emotions, has complexity of rhythm and of emotional delivery, both musically and lyrically, would really work here. And the shifting perspectives, I'd love to see with multiple vocalists that I could tell apart. I know there were two vocalists in this track. They all sounded the same to me. I'm going to be completely honest. Some of that is just the rigidity and rapidity of the vocal work. Even if they were real humans singing these lines for real, I think I still might have had some difficulty in telling them apart if their vocal timbres had any sort of similarity to them, just because you don't have a lot of time between the attack and the release, so you don't get to hear the raw characteristics of these vocal textures and timbres and characteristics. So yeah, I think it's a cool song in and of itself. It's very dancey, very bouncy, very anxious. It does its thing very well. But I think for these lyrics, I would really prefer a more nuanced approach to telling this story. That's not to say it would be a better song. I just think I would enjoy it more from a storytelling perspective. So these are my thoughts on The Fox's Wedding by MASA WORKS Design, featuring Hatsune Miku and Gumi. What did you think of this track? Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you would like to add on to what I said or correct me on? If you have your own interpretation or perspective on the song, the lyrics, any of it, please put all of that and any other thoughts you might have down into the comments section. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. It takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.